In recent years, it has been shown that many millionaires are not born with the resources to start their own businesses. There is a growing group of them who have come from ordinary people and those who only seek to improve themselves while increasing their fortune. However, there are also some people who have had difficult lives with many problems involved, and yet have achieved their goals of self-improvement, wealth, and an extremely comfortable life. That's just the topic we're going to talk about today, as we look at one of those millionaires who has had a hard and complicated life. Why? Why, they have all achieved their goals despite the odds, and have beaten others in the race to achieve financial stability through their own efforts. How did he do it? What did he start to increase his assets and become a rich and prosperous man? And how did he get ahead and overcome all difficulties? We will learn all this and more from one of the most renowned figures in the world of finance. With you, Gran Cardone, the man who went from a series of street drugs to the healthy, successful, and prosperous man he is today. Those who know or have heard of Gran Cardone know that the man is a professional in the field of sales, business management, and investments, and ventures that are directly related to the real estate sector. Known for holding the title of CEO of his own company, Cardone Capital, the millionaire entrepreneur has also authored books such as the 10X Rule and founded valuable events such as 10X GrowthCon, all to help people who, like him, are looking to improve their financial situation and realize their full potential in the process. While his life sounds and may seem perfect in many ways, Gran Cardone did not inherit a fortune from a distant relative, nor did he develop a program that can be found on every computer in the world. No, his beginnings were far more complicated than those of his peers. But it was those same eventful days that gradually shaped him as a person and as an entrepreneur, leading his ideas to success. Before we begin to recount some of his most painful experiences, please be warned that his story is not for all ears. What the great Cardone saw was real, raw, and may even seem cruel, but it is precisely in that harshness that the most important lessons we can take away from his life are lodged. Out of respect for him and all that happened, we tell you about these situations without holding anything back. Why? Because he has already exposed such experiences on a few occasions, and he has always believed that people deserve to know the truth, so as not to make the same mistakes. That said, let's take a look at some of the toughest passages in Cardone's life. This is the true, uncut story of how one man went from being a drug addict living on the streets to becoming one of the world's most recognizable millionaires. Those who know him don't know where he comes from, and think that going to events to give lectures, making millionaire deals with various real estate agencies, and traveling with his family in a private jet to their next holiday is all the life that Gran Cardone has experienced over the years. How wrong they are. What many don't know is that he was a man who had to overcome a strong drug addiction for at least 10 years. At the time, Cardone didn't know who he was or what he wanted to do with his life, to the point that he had to go through several terrible experiences before he realized that if he wanted something, he would have to seek it out and get it with your own hands. One of the most traumatic situations he was subjected to was the following. Grant was 23 years old and was buying drugs from a dealer in the middle of the street. At that time, he had already been dealing with addiction for several years, but in his own words, he was not interested in getting out of the addiction he had gotten himself into. He was satisfied with what he had experienced, and his narcotic thoughts anesthetized any guilt or pain and then expelled it from his being. The boy seemed to have struck a deal with the dealer, but the dealer thought he would rather cash in on the drugs he was using at gunpoint. Although Grant has never clarified whether or not he was sober at the time, what he has said is that he got rid of the muzzle of that .45 caliber gun, which was pointed directly at his face. Of course, the rest of his body did not suffer the same fate, as the dealer punched him to relieve his frustration. Cardone was in the hospital for 3 days, with at least 70 stitches in his head, face, and some limbs. do you know what was the worst of it all? Even that event didn't change his mind about the drugs he was putting in his body. It was another 2 years before he seriously considered giving up that lifestyle. What do you think was the trigger for Gran Cardone to give up addictions? It was his mother. She saved him from going on and ending up on a worse path compared to everything that happened to him. With 25 years behind her, the lady pondered the problem and decided to kick a young Cardone out of her house. That saved his life and allowed him to take responsibility for what he was doing to himself. Quote, "That was the moment I knew I had to kick the habit," says the businessman whenever he talks about it. He spent the next 30 days in a detox and treatment center. For the first time in more than a decade, Gran Cardone was sober and ready to shape his dream. But first, he had to deal with certain comments that, fortunately, he didn't hear. Quote, "At the treatment center, he had expressed that he had always had big dreams. From a very young age, I wanted to be rich and famous. The counselor told me that I had to stop all that or I would end up going back to drugs. I had to concentrate on being normal and not getting high every day." Did those comments trigger something in Cardone? Of course it did. Grant has commented that when he heard the counselor talk about his dreams in that way, he became furious and vowed to himself that he would prove him and all the doubters completely wrong. With that thought in mind, Cardone left the center, at the same time realizing something he had not paid much attention to before. If he had time on his hands, he was more likely to get into trouble. The revelation, besides scaring him back into the world of drugs, brought him closer to a job that, though he hated it, he decided to take: sales. He arrived very early at the place where he did his work, and was always one of the last to go home. He used every moment to absorb more and more knowledge about how to sell effectively. In the end, he made the most of his time, and that effort and dedication paid off. So Cardone began to teach others how to get good results in selling. Over the years, Gran Cardone not only perfected the art of selling, but also earned more and more income on his own, and it was all due to a teaching that has stayed with him to this day. Quote, "What I hated the most, I became a multimillionaire. That taught me a valuable lesson. Addiction wasn't the problem. I was addicted to the wrong thing." That's how it is. Gran Cardone never stopped being addicted to anything. What happened is that instead of focusing that attention on harmful things, he chose to use that extra energy and hunger on an activity that benefited him completely. Quote, "If you have the capacity to be addicted or obsessed, congratulate yourself. It's not a bad quality. You have what it takes to be great. Obsess about your goals and fill your time. That's what it takes." We have reached the end of this video, and thanks to Gran Cardone's comments and experience, now have a broader notion of what it is to be a millionaire, as well as its difficulties and the challenges that must be overcome to achieve that goal. May the story of this entrepreneur and investor serve as an example of the changes that must be made in life if you want to achieve the financial success that others have achieved before you. And you, what do you think of Gran Cardone's life? Do you think that everything he has achieved can be achieved by emulating his footsteps? Or would you do something completely different to achieve a prosperous life? Leave your comments below and add these ideas to new topics, which you must surely have as pending. See you next time!